everyone, I'm now on Patreon. Click the link below. Not only keep the free content coming with tutorials, tips, podcasts, etc., but get a bunch of free stuff like live stream Q&As, copy of my book, voting on topics, behind the scenes, bunch of cool stuff. Click the link down below to join. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 5 of the Scott Stokely podcast. Still talking about myself in the third person like a real athlete. And this is the third interview I'm doing, and this is absolutely something I'm so excited about. There are no words to describe this. I have Victor Malafronte, PDGA member number 2, okay, as in 002. Now, Victor's going to do a lot of the talking here. We're going to talk about the history of the sport. He's going to school me on things that I don't know. But I want to start this real quick by talking about a couple of myths that people have. And they're myths about me, but they both relate to Victor. So the first myth is that, as I wrote in my book, I played my first round of golf on the world's first disc golf course when there was one course in the world. And people say, oh my God, Scott, you're an OG. You're one of the pioneers, one of the originals. That could not be further from the truth. There was several generations. I consider myself third generation Frisbee player / disc golfer. There were several generations before me, beginning with the earliest days of Frisbee sports, later to be called flying disc sports, but back then it was mostly Frisbee. Victor is one of the originals. When I was a kid, I had to have heroes in sports, just like every other kid had their sports heroes, and my hero included people like Victor. So Victor is the OG, or one of the OGs. That's the first myth. The second myth is that in the 90s, well, this is not a myth, in the 90s, I did a large part to play my part in the evolution of the sport by pushing forward the sidearm with the clinics, and I was the only guy on tour that was using this throw at this time. And people mistakenly think that I either invented the sidearm or I was one of the original sidearm throwers, also a myth. But I'm talking to the person right now who, if he didn't invent the sidearm, he is one of the inventors of the sidearm. Literally, and I don't want to call out his age here, but literally he had not only thrown the sidearm, but mastered it before I was born. So I am not an OG. I did not invent the sidearm, but I'm talking to the person that did. Or if he didn't, he's going to correct me. But PDJ number 2 and a dear friend of mine from way back when, Victor Malafronte. Thank you, Victor, for joining the podcast.
All right, Scott. Good to see you, bro.
It's great to see you too, man. I've not seen you in years. It's been,
I know,
like, oh, the time flies, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sure does. You end up getting old and ugly like me. Oh my God.
Well, you mean like us? Come on, give me a break.
Okay, wait, hold on a sec. Speak up a little bit because it's still hard. You don't have to shout, but it's hard for me to hear you.
All right, cool. I will talk a little bit louder, and if you could tilt the camera down a little bit because we need to see all of that pretty face. There we go. All right, man.
Okay, cool.
So, and I will definitely talk louder. I think it's going to record just fine, but we're having audio issues. I think it's because of our age. Like, technology just doesn't work when you're past the age of 30. So it's not our fault.
And a lot of other things don't work when you're past 70. So you can add that one.
I'm going to pretend. I'm going to ignore that's a reality. So.
Well, yeah, okay, you do that. Do that for as long as you can, too.
I will do that. All right,
so, my man.
A couple questions. So before we start talking about history, I mean, a lot of people make it through podcasts mostly, and then they get to work and don't tune in for the last. So I do want to mention a couple projects that you have on the table right off the bat, and then we'll get into talking about the history of our great sport. But two things. Number one, you have a book out about the Berkeley Frisbee Club. Is that the first Frisbee club in the world?
That's the Berkeley Frisbee Group. Berkeley Frisbee Group, which started, well, at 1968 at UC Berkeley campus. That's the birthplace of Frisbee. It's the whatchamacallit, oh God, I didn't think. The Mecca of Frisbee started in Berkeley in 1968.
Okay, that's amazing. And this is so. And you wrote a book about this, which we're going to talk at length about this. But I want to make sure people know the book's available. And
Okay.
where would they find the book when they get
Where would they
inspired?
find the book? Right? They find it right over here.
Okay.
Can you see it?
So they just message you on Facebook, Victor Malafronte?
Yes, it's what I've been posting on Facebook trying to get donations for my back surgery. The
Okay.
VA, yeah, the VA refuses to uh, take care of me, and I've been going back and forth with these guys, so now I got to do it on my own.
Okay.
But the book, the the family history of the Berkeley Frisbee group, the Keepsake 2020, is about all the people that most other people haven't heard of. There were six guys, Dave, Book, Chuck Pitt, Jay Shelton, Steve Sewell, and Tom Baudet, who am I? I'm missing somebody, Bob May. These six guys didn't have any peers. They just like, boom, they developed this freestyle thing and field events just on their own because they were having a good time. So you really got to go back and look at those six people, and I cover each one of them in the book, as well as the other after them. In '69 was the Berkeley Frisbee group. So, at any rate, we could talk about the book later, but it's on Facebook. I'm trying to get $10, okay, from half of my 4,900 friends on Facebook to help pay for my back surgery. I can understand it's money, but this is a good thing because not only can it help me, that this could be an ongoing thing. Well, we have other Frisbee people we know, disc golfers, that are having a rough time, or some corona problems. We can help them by a cluster of people sending $10, 1,000 people sending $10 a month to somebody who's going to change their life. And that's where I think this thing could lead. And I call it a care book and all. So maybe that's something in the future. But right now, I got to get my back fixed. I'm not done, man. You know what I mean? I still have guns and all that. I still want to crank on a golf course. I still want to hit double-fisted backhands down the line in tennis. You know what I mean? And I can't. And the freaking corona's, all I do is go to the store and go home. Go to the store and go home. So it's been a great life so far.
Well, I think I know why your back's hurt. I'll tell one of the early stories of when I met you. You may or may not remember this, but because you met a lot of people, but when you're a little kid and you meet one of your heroes, that's imprinted forever. So we were on the tee pad of hole 3 at La Mirada, and I stepped up on the tee pad, and it was just you and I said, hey, watch this. I have a really great sidearm. I was probably 13 years old at the time, and I threw a sidearm. I don't remember if it was a good shot or not, but I was showing off the sidearm that I had, right? And your response was, you said, that's really cool, kid. How about this one? And you stood on the tee pad, you threw it behind your back, and you hit the basket. Do you remember that?
Well, if you try that often enough, pretty soon you're going to hit metal somewhere along the way. But I'm glad you brought that up because that's the thing. That's what's left for me to do. Besides die, the next thing I want to do is do a behind the back ace. And I'm telling you, as the years go by, the holes get longer and longer. And so I save my behind the back shots for up shots. Okay, and I dedicate them to people.
Well, I remember it because when you meet one of your heroes and he gets one shot and he steps up and does that, you feel as a little kid that you can do that every time on command. And you just go, oh my God. And there were so many things in my life that led me to wanting to pursue this game and sport the rest of my life. And you're one of those.
Great.
I will try not to compliment you 1,000 more times, but it's from the heart. You're one of my heroes, Victor. So let's talk about the beginning. So the Berkeley Frisbee Club, you were not originally part of that group, or when did you
Berkeley Frisbee Group. It's the Berkeley Frisbee Group, the BFG.
BFG.
I'm
Okay.
part of the Berkeley Frisbee group. The Berkeley Six pioneer Frisbee players that I mentioned earlier, they're also in the Berkeley Frisbee group, but there's a separate, we made them their own group for these six guys. And they went to all the tournaments, and it's all written up in my book about them. And it's just phenomenal, this, because if I didn't start doing this, it was, Skippy Jammer who reminded me again, hey, Victor, well, who's going to write about the Berkeley Club? We got a lot of talented people there. And so I started writing some stuff in the late 70s, I think it was. I still have the scratch paper. And so he said that to me again a couple years, last year, and boom, I started doing it. I just did just the Berkeley, and it was 10 pages. And then I kept getting more information from the guys in the club. And now it turned out to be 94 pages, okay, of stuff. A lot of support stuff because it's written by me from my perspective, but with the help of the Frisbee family. And there's a lot of Frisbee family. And it was taken from 1,000,000 points in the sky, all condensed into one little book. So yeah, the Berkeley Frisbee Group. What we're also doing is we are making honorary players, members of the Berkeley Frisbee Group, and Dr. Stantle Johnson is the first one, and Tom Schott, John Kirkland, Paul Clark, and that's it. That's for the first round. So we're gonna keep adding people. I got to get Spider Wills in there. There's a Steady Ed Hedrick, who was like my god, when I was in the Frisbee, the guy that was like a second dad that I had on the West Coast. So,
Gotcha.
yeah.
So the original group, were they the original six? Were they students at Cal, or were they just hippies hanging out in the Bay Area?
They were students. Not only were there those six of these guys, the Berkeley Six pioneer players, they all graduated from UC Berkeley. Most of them have PhDs. And Chuck Pitt was a double major. While he was there, I was unable to contact them. It's amazing. All the time I spent on the internet trying to find a couple of these guys, it's been really tough. And Dave Book, when I saw Dave, I was on campus in the summer of '68, and I had a good time, but I still remember that. And I was on an upper level looking over Lower Sparrow Plaza, and Dave Book, I see him throw a behind the back skip shot right to his partner. He didn't have to move. I couldn't believe it. It was like, oh shit. I went down to Lower Plaza and I got right in their game. I waved to Dave and he got me involved. He showed me the grip and all that. And for the next month, that's all I did was try to throw behind the back. I was such a freak, man. You know what I mean? I threw a Whammo Pro 92 yards behind the back at El Cerrito in 1970 to win the distance event. Behind my back. And I have this two-finger macho sidewinder trip where Stork said, what are the odds that the first person would be the best at throwing sidearm? I'll never forget that. And he was right. And I haven't seen anyone. I remember you throwing sidearm. You weren't gripping the disc the right way. I won't embarrass you. But we did a demo. What was it, Lake Chabot? Didn't we do a demo for the handicapped kids by the lake?
1990, we did a special needs class.
Oh, right. Okay. And I was telling everybody, and all the kids and everybody, watch this. Scott Stokely is going to throw the Frisbee over the lake. Remember?
Okay.
You didn't want me to say that or something. Maybe I put too much pressure on you. But you were smart enough to throw it towards the edge of the lake, where it's not as wide as the center. And boom. And you did it. And that was great to see that.
I love that. So were you weren't originally in Berkeley then? You were somewhere else?
Oh yeah. I'm a Berkeley. I'm a Brooklyn boy. Okay. I'm a born Catholic boy in Flatbush, Brooklyn, who went to church, went into the Marine Corps, got out of the Marine Corps, went to California, to Berkeley with my brother. Okay, entered this culture shock that was just my head is still spinning today from what the hell was going on over there. You know, it really was one of the best places to be in the late 60s was in Berkeley, and of course throughout the 70s. And I used that to make myself out as being this really big ladies man, and I wasn't. Okay, I was shy with women, actually. I really was. So, and you know, other social inadequacies. So that was in 1968. My brother got married, has 3 kids. He's doing great. I'm divorced, sold the house, happy again, and just moving on. I'm doing a podcast. I wrote another freaking book. You know what? That's great, man. I coming out here to Berkeley was the best thing I could ever done for my life. And we left Brooklyn because the heavy drug culture, believe it or not, it was. And when one of my friends OD'd and his 2 buddies got him into the house and laid him on the rug in his mother's house, and they found him in the morning dead. We said, "Oh," my brother and I just said, "Oh, that's it. We're out of here. We don't like the cold weather." So we packed up and headed to Berkeley.
Gotcha. So you found Frisbee, but so at the time there was no tournaments. There was no, I mean, it was just a toy at the time.
No, well, wait a minute. I have to correct you there, because there were. I'm going to slap you too, so you better be nice. So what?
I'm still bigger than you, Victor.
Hey, don't make me come over there, Scott.
Hey, but here's the problem. You're invited. I'll buy you. Anyway.
Okay. All right. What was I talking about? I totally lost.
No, you were talking about, I said that I was asking if there were tournaments.
Oh, the tournament. Okay. Right on. I did the right thing. I saved everything that was Frisbee in my whole life, just about. I think only Tom McGran has a bigger archive than I do, especially paper-wise, and that sort of information and all. And whatchamacallit, I'm having a senior moment here. You'll have them too. All right, with tournaments, UC Berkeley had the first Frisbee tournament that I knew of that amounted really to anything, and I was in 1968. And at that tournament, Bob May, they had distance, accuracy, and guts, and mentally accuracy as well. And Bob May was the perennial distance champion. When he was throwing at that tournament, you have to measure up, and high up on the building did he hit, you know. And these little stories are in my book. So they had this great little Frisbee tournament, and I didn't play, but the Berkeley 5, I think it was 5 of the Berkeley 6 guys were there playing. It was Steve, Chuck, and Bob, and not Baudet. Who else was that? And at any rate, so that was basically the first like collegiate Frisbee tournament. And then in 1969, they wanted to stage the first intercollegiate Frisbee tournament with Stanford. So Stanford sent some players up to Berkeley, and we creamed them like 27-6. They were great guys. We also played disc golf on a Berkeley campus, which was the first 18-hole course in the world, even though it was an object course. Okay, it was. And we used to make up our own holes. We didn't want to put the whole thing together. We wanted that element where I know who I was playing against, and I know they were weak doing right to left backhand throws, and we would call them mandatories. I always made my mandatories going around the left of anything. Of course, my 2-finger macho sidewinder would bury them and all. But we had fun. We had fun doing that. So that's the start of this. And that was really the first intercollegiate Frisbee tournament. It's in I got the pictures and everything, newspaper articles. And
who
yeah,
won?
Go ahead.
Who won the first Frisbee golf tournament?
Who was what?
So who won?
Speak up.
I said, who won the first tournament? Was it just head to head?
Oh, in golf?
Yeah.
No, I played the 4 guys from Stanford.
Okay,
I took the 4 guys, and one guy from Humboldt State. I took him on the Berkeley course. We played. Of course, I should have been the person who would beat them all, because their eyes were like, oh, you know, just like you were when you were a kid in La Mirada. And yeah, and so those kind of stuff is really neat to, to go back and think about those things. And the thing is, I have to apologize again for not writing about the history of the Berkeley Frisbee group sooner. I waited way too long to do it because there's so much stuff in that book. There's 4 pages of claim to fame Frisbee Berkeley stuff. We just kept adding and adding, and all of it's true as well. We're not making stuff up here, okay? And a lot of people don't know about it because the people on the East Coast are trying to take credit for everything, and then the West Coast wasn't even around then. They never even came out to California to play a tournament until 1974, and we were doing it in '68. Anyway, that's a whole political thing. I don't want to get into that now, but we will be dealing with
it. Okay. Yeah. So now the next part of this story, because I'm friends with so many old timers, and the recurring story that you get from so many of them was, at some point, they were playing Frisbee in Rochester and didn't realize that people were playing anywhere else in the world. And there was people in Austin, and people in all these different cities started popping up, but they were unaware that there were other Frisbee groups out there.
Well, yes, right. That's true.
So when did you become aware of, or when did these groups start to figure out that other people were playing?
Sure. Great. That's a good question. Because you have to look at Ken Westerfield, Gail McCall, and Jim Kenner. These guys started they're in my book. These guys started in 1971, and they had their own speed float game. Just trick catches, hardly any tipping, no delay. Delay wasn't even known of at that time in '71, and they were doing demos for CPI, at Continental Protection. Continental something, whatever. Anyway, so they were already doing demos. They already had their speed flow thing going. Another group is Mike and Bill Schneider. Mike and Bill Schneider made 3 tours of Europe, rock and roll tours. They were doing stuff with Don McLean's American Pies, and all kinds of stuff, and they set the tone. The game in Europe was Mike and Bill Schneider, and they also had their own. It was a little bit different, but they had their own speed flow game. Okay, and Westerfield and the Schneider brothers didn't know about the Berkeley Frisbee group at that time. So those are 2 really eye openers there to say that, hey, there might be some more people out there. There could be 2 women who played all the time, and we just haven't reached them, and I'd hope to hear from them. We want to hear this kind of stuff. We're into the history stuff and all. Disc golf, they just worried about the next golf disc they're going to buy. But you have a history, okay? You have a history, and you should know about it and all. And I'm going to make you know about it, so don't make me come over there.
But you're the Brooklyn in you keeps coming out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hey, I won't deny that.
Okay, so now these groups are popping up all over the country. When did the tournaments start happening that people around the country started coming? When did you get to play against Westerfield and Kenner and all these other players? When did that start?
Okay. Well, I mentioned about Berkeley they had 3 tournaments they had in Berkeley called Big Game Week. All right. There's 3 of them, 68 to 71, I think, or 72. And so those tournaments started there. Also, there's the IFT, the International Guts Frisbee Championships in Michigan, which started around 57, but probably 65 and all. But then there were other little tournaments. The other tournament Roger Barrett set up with El Cerrito Parks and Rec Department in 1970. That's where I threw the 92 yards behind my back. So that was the tournament. We had a Berkeley 72. We had a Berkeley tournament in Berkeley, Parks and Rec. We had that tournament there. Bob May won distance. Bob May always won distance, as though it was anybody else at that time, and all. And then those little type of tournaments were coming up. I was with Stanford Johnson, and we went to this little tournament. They set up a tire, and you had to throw through the tire like they do at the IFT. And I'm standing there, and these people, nobody's making a shot through the tire, and I threw my first four in a row, and I cracked up and didn't make another one after that. But I ended up winning a mini motorcycle, you know, which I sold because I'd kill myself on it if I was riding it. So there were those little pockets of things going here and there. There's also a film that's on YouTube, 1957. There was a tournament in California, and they gave out trophies. They used hula hoops for accuracy and all this other stuff. And that's all only information I can find out about it. So you have to figure that Whammo with their Frisbees, they're going to want to make some tournaments. And so what they started with was Irv Lander when he did the Junior Frisbee Championships. And I think that started in 68 as well. So the West Coast, you know, we are the pioneers of Frisbee. There's other people like Ken and the Schneider brothers and those people who contributed to the history as well. And Ken came out to Willow Spire Plaza. And that was like I said, the Mecca of Frisbee. And people would say that, oh, we're going to the Mecca of Frisbee, like they're making this journey, you know, like some God is going to be there for them, you know, and they're going to go around the building 100 times. And, you know, so, yeah. So that was part of it as well.
But what you're saying, though, it's not strange, because the story that I've heard so many times from these players, from all over the country, all over the world, was that when they thought that they were the only people that played, being able to find other people that played was a connection that they did, like that was a connection to something global. Like that wasn't a small deal. That was Mecca, if that's what you loved.
Well, it was. No, it absolutely was. I agree. But in 73, Jim Kenner put on, he had a tournament in Canada, in Toronto, and I went there. And the freestyle event wasn't even called freestyle at the time, you know, trick catch is what it was. But they didn't judge a team. They just judged one person. And that was like the start of judging freestyle. And I won that at that time. A lot of other good players weren't there, you know, who could have, you know, made things a little rougher for me. So that, and then of course, Stork, this is amazing. Stork decided for his first tournament ever, he's going to have 8 events. Okay. And he's 8 events, and which of 2 he and Palmieri came up with, and just, you know, to add to the tournament. And that was incredible, and it went off really well too. There weren't a lot of delays. I mean, there weren't 100 people there to compete, and all. So he did that, and that to me to this day that was a gutsy move to do in 1974. And so when Kirkland and I toured with the Globetrotters, oh my God, the Globies, what a tour! That's where we ran into Freddie Haft, Kelly Colmar, and Palmieri, and that's how the network started to go. And Tom Monroe, those people. And so that's how the cluster started to grow. And look what Palmieri did. He had 2 18-hole Frisbee golf contests. One, he gave away a car. I mean, he had to pay for that car for 4 years to make payments for it. But he loved the sport so much. I don't care. I'm going to give away a car. And he did, and Stork won it.
Yeah, so, okay, so I do remember that. So just real quick, so for those of, Stork is Dan Roddick, who's PDGA number...
sorry, yeah.
That's all right.
003.
PDGA number 3. He was also the head of sports promotion at Whammo.
Yes.
He was the, there were so many people that get credit, but he was able to funnel Whammo money into the sport. He had the ability to do that nobody else could do, because Whammo was the one making the money off Frisbee sales. So Stork was the one that was able to channel that marketing towards the competitive side, not just television commercials. but actual competition. So he helped pioneer it as a sport for sure.
Right.
We have to talk about the Globetrotters. Now, I want to share something because we have a younger audience, many of whom have probably heard of the Globetrotters, but what they're not understand is just how big of a deal the Globetrotters were. So right now, in the modern era, with 100 cable channels and YouTube and social media, there are tens of thousands of celebrities out there in all genres. But back in the 70s, when there was 3 major television networks and a couple big newspaper chains, I mean, there were only a few mega celebrities. People like Evel Knievel can never happen again because there was only so much airtime available on Wide World of Sports. If you were Evel Knievel, you were famous. The next 1,000 best motorcycle jumpers in the world you've never heard of, right?
Yeah.
But he was mega. Well, the same thing held true for the Globetrotters. Globetrotters
Yes,
were
it
actually
does.
they were on television multiple times a year. As a kid,
Yeah, I have.
Globetrotters were on.
Right. I wrote a little thing about that in the book. John Kirkland, he was thinking one day, and it's kind of hard for John to do that, but he came up with this over here at the home course in Escondido. He's known as the man who can say every word in one sentence. What we're trying to do is get him not to say all those words all the time. I tease him. He's a smart guy and all that. Anyway, he tried to figure where can I go and where I can entertain the most people at one time. And he thought the Globetrotters. So he contacted the Globetrotters, and then he got with me, and I went to Boston with him because we had an audition going to set for the Globetrotters. But before that, when I was a kid in Brooklyn, okay, the Globetrotters were on ABC, Wild World of Sports. Mm-hmm. Every time they were, everybody, my grandfather, everybody, the kids were watching that show. Man, we were thrilled.
All of
us. But don't interrupt me. But to think that one day, and to think that one day I would be invited to Menalock Lemon's Christmas party at his house with the entire Globetrotter team. Bing! I mean, that was fun. It's still now, it's just surreal. It really is. I mean, and a very nice family too, by the way. And the Globetrotter tour, Kirkland did, that was a great thing because what John did was and I was there too, but we had to spread all this Frisbee stuff around the country, newspapers and just on TV and all of that. And so that was a start for a lot of people to got exposed to. In fact, Scott Zimmerman is the only player to see a Globetrotter show and Tom McCran and my Frisbee ice show on skates for the Washington Capitals in Washington, D.C. That's amazing. That's just really hard to do. And he did. So that was cool.
No, but that's not it. You guys were Johnny Appleseed because every time you went and performed in front of 10,000 people, that imprinted the idea of how fun Frisbee is or what could be done with a Frisbee. Like those are planting seeds. Even if we don't connect the dots between who that affected by big names, that affected the entire sport of disc golf today. What you did back then, it's all connected, Victor. Like don't play this. I mean, this was. Oh my God, there was no internet, Victor. You were the internet. You were reaching 10,000 views every single day.
Yeah, that's right. And you hear about these rock groups. They have this really long tour. Oh, we went to 20 cities in a month, and it was wonderful. The Globetrotters go to 180 cities in 6 months. That was every day a different city with the Globetrotters for 6 months. And they connected tours. We did 2 demos a couple of times in 2 different cities in the same day and all. So anyway, that was good. But one thing about the Globetrotter tour, everything was choreographed to get an audience reaction. We knew that was the key to it. And, playing with three and doing four Frisbees at one time. We did five Frisbees at one time in practice only once, otherwise we'd shoot ourselves. If we tried it again. But there's one thing we overlooked was that boomerang throws. John and I kitty corner on the court. I would throw this sidearm shot, boomerang throw, and would disappear. It's a lot of times behind the air conditioner or in the gloom of the stadium, and then it would come back around, and John knows where to be, to catch it, and because everybody's watching the Frisbee, they're not watching John, and then the Frisbee comes around, and John does a quick behind the head catch, and everybody goes nuts. And the thing was that we didn't really we could have done it sitting in a chair, and that phenomenal throw that disappears and reappears again is magical, kind of. And that's how I felt they thought it was a kind of a magical thing, And we were just having a great time doing it, John would crank these backhands like as hard. And the thing is, when you play inside of a dome like that, you can throw as hard as you want, and you're not going to hit anything. And a lot of people haven't had that experience, and I'm glad that I did.
Well, the thing that is, it would be impossible to understand if you weren't there, but before Frisbee, objects went up and then they went down.
Yeah.
And that's what it did. I mean, before injection molded plastic,
parabolic.
Yeah. And so the idea of something floating and hovering was, literally there were people that either hadn't seen it or had barely even seen something fly that way. It's not like today. You can't impress people the same way with Frisbee that you could back then, because it was that revolutionary.
Yeah, it's a novelty for sure. It was. And you're right. It's a Frisbee flies. A ball just goes in a parabolic and doesn't fly.
Right.
But you make the Frisbee fly. You make it go where you want it to go. And what's happened since then? Well, now we have 10,000 disc golf courses and 5.5 million people playing them every week. At least that was before, COVID and all of that. So
it's more now, Victor. This has been a boom for the sport.
Oh, hey, let me tell you, you're right. When I started doing the research for the BFG book, I've been away. I hurt my back. It's old man disease. T3, T4 discs they have to be replaced. I am really hurt, and I tried to play with Kirkland last year. It's just not going to work out. And anyway, what was I going to say? Hello?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, you went off screen there for a second. Okay. Oh, yeah. When I was doing the research, I realized I'm looking at all these pictures and stuff and thinking, oh, yeah, I didn't play for a long time. I didn't play in the 1990s because I suffered from these headaches that I got from the Marine Corps from their toxic water program. At any rate, I'm looking and I see these. I can't believe, is this a real gallery? Is this photoshopped or whatever? And I couldn't believe it. Thousands of people are watching disc golf. They had the opening of a court at course, I think it was in Finland, in Europe, where they had Fierce Paige Pierce. I like to see her putt one of these days and knock the basket over. Okay, the way this young gal shoots, and gentleman Paul Macbeth, and you got Ricky Wasicki, and I don't know if that's a Japanese food or a Japanese drink or whatever. He's a cool guy. I saw him. He's trying to break the record with his Frisbee dog, but the dog was great, but he just couldn't make it at 130 feet. So, we can do. So anyway, I'm looking at all this stuff. I'm going, oh my God, this thing is just exploded. And all. I'm talking to Tom Schott, my good friend. I said, Tom, what the hell is going on here? This thing is fabulous. It's just unbelievable to think that in 1969, I'm playing pro Frisbee on a college campus. And the only thing we were worried about is some student picking up the Frisbee and throwing it back at us. And so we came up with, leave it there. And now what do we have? We have this sport that's just tearing through. And I want to be able to, of course, with COVID and all, I want to be able to go to one of these tournaments. I just want to, at first, just go there and be in the crowd and see how they react to things. Because it's new to me. It really is. It's new to me. The crowds I played to, Frisbee golf, were really small. And we kind of like knew everyone who was there anyway and
Yeah.
all. Yeah. So, yeah, that was pretty good, man. I just,
Well,
I can almost cry, I can tell you.
yeah.
See that.
Well, you performed in front of the Globetrotters, but you also have competed in front of monster crowds, because what many people don't realize is that let's talk about the IFA and the Rose Bowl. Were those connected? IFA and they were connected, right? The Rose Bowl events.
Yeah, Stork.
So tell us.
Stork took over. He took over for uh, Steady Ed Hedrick wanted to do disc golf. That's what his vision was. He interviewed me. He interviewed Tom McCran. He interviewed Stork, and I told Steady Ed Stork was the guy you should hire to run the IFA, and he did. And what did Stork do? He made this thing flourish and grow, and he put sense into it, structure, put fun into it, and all that, and the camaraderie and all these different teams and people all over. I saw that too, because the only other tournament I saw way back was 1972, when 10 of our BFG players went to Michigan for the Guts tournament. And I'm thinking, this is it. This is what we have. This is all we have to look for. Although it was great, to be there and all of that. Those are meek little beginnings. But Stoke took the reins and he ran with it. And he accomplished a lot of wonderful things, and some things maybe weren't so wonderful. And we should all be thankful to him for doing the time that he did until 74 to 82, I think it was, and all.
Yeah. So when was the first Rose Bowl? Was that 75?
No, 74.
74. Okay.
Yeah. So I won the first. I was the male winner. Pay attention, because I'm going to interrupt you a lot. Okay. Don't make me come over there.
You
So yeah, you know what? That's the only thing I wanted, was to win the first World Frisbee Championship. Sure, Jay Sheldon was a better player than I was, but that's what I wanted to do. And I had Jay Sheldon and I had this nice conversation the day before the tournament and all, which really inspired me. So I owe a lot of it to him. So I won that. Monica Lou won distance. She just creamed everyone. There's just a little girl, a little Monica. This girl could rip. She 86 yards, and the other girls are around 60. Because she was using the Bob May power grip with the long pendulum. Little tiny Monica was really wonderful. So yeah, and then Kirkland won distance. And I was glad that he did. I didn't want to win distance. I wanted him to win the distance, because we were going to go on tour with the Globetrotters right after the first WFC. And I'm thinking, well, let's see. You're going to introduce me as being the World Frisbee champion, and John Kirkland is my catcher. That was not that was not going to play out too well. So good. That was perfect that happened. And so we had a good time, and a lot of people thanked Stork and Steady Ed, and a lot of people, Paul Mary, and other people like that.
Yeah. Okay, so I have to ask you about John Kirkland, because everyone who meets John today loves him. But when you ask the players who played with him back in the 70s about John Kirkland, the opinions weren't always that.
You mean he wasn't always sweet and really friendly? He didn't take you under your wing and give you a little pat on the butt and on the butt and say, "That's okay. Next time you'll do better." John was a competitor. He's a really intense dude. Okay, this guy, he still is. Okay, he's up in Seattle, Washington. He's living there in his house with his daughter and her husband and their little girl JJ. And there's a connection to JJ in the Frisbee book too, right at the end. You'll see that. And, you know, John does things to extremes. Very health conscious. He went out the other day, okay? He was actually outside somewhere in Seattle, but in the shade. Okay. Did not want to be in the sun whatsoever. When we played at the Escondido course, he comes out. There's not one point of skin on that man that the sun could land on. He had the long cotton shirts on, the big brim hat with the towel in the back, you know, and all that. It's just a really intense guy. You know, that's how he is, and you're going to hang out with Kirkland. Yeah, he's a smart guy, and he could be a great guy. That's not a problem, but he's really intense character. He really is.
Gotcha. So what about Van Miller? Was he in the Rose Bowl era, or did he come after?
No, he came not the first or second. I think he was in the third Rose Bowl. Van Miller. He was another guy. This is a guy who could really crank a disc too. He didn't play that much though. I didn't see very much of him in California.
Okay. So when you were at the Bowl, how many people were in the stands for the championships?
Oh, I counted them. 25,002 people were there. 002.
Yeah, 25,000. No.
No, it was about 25K. It was, and it was marvelous, and it was great because Kirkland and I are standing on stage. We're with Catherine Bach, who's part of the Daisy, the Daisy Duke TV show and all that, and so we're on stage with her, telling people, and John and Victor are going to go on tour with the Harlem Globetrotters. I mean, what else could we have added to that to make it any better? You know, that was surreal too.
That's beautiful. So you played all through the Rose Bowl era in the 70s, and you were still competing in the 80s. But how long in the 80s were you competing for?
Oh, I didn't go. You know, I didn't have the money to go to all these Frisbee tournaments. I didn't want to. When I left Brooklyn and I saw the different lifestyle in Berkeley, what people were doing, I said, I don't want to work for 10 years. And all. So what I didn't want to do is have a career for 10 years other than do nothing, other than going to the plaza.
All right. So you didn't want to work for 10, so you didn't go to all the tournaments. So do you remember when we first met? Was this late 70s or early? It was early 80s when I met you, right?
Yeah, it would have to have been because I was working at Brand X at the time, Southern California, and all. Yeah, it was probably, I was there in 1980. 1980, I was down south, and that's where you would have probably met me back then. I think one of the last major tournaments I went to was the Masters overall in Springfield, Missouri in 81. And I won it, you know, and that was great. I won two other Masters with Tom Schott in Santa Cruz and all of that. So yeah, so that was good too.
God, that's crazy. So we met in the early 80s. Well, I have to ask. I've never asked you. What was your impression of me? Because I remember myself as we're gone.
Yeah.
I remember myself as a very annoying, arrogant punk kid.
Speak up.
I remember myself as an annoying, arrogant punk kid.
Yes, and so do I. Yeah.
Okay, good. So good. I'm glad.
I would have added a couple of adjectives to that, but I'm trying to be nice to you. So.
Hey, you know what? I was, you know, it's sports, and I remember like trying to be the best in the world, but then I was looking up to people like you and Joe Orsino and Mark Horn and oh my God, the list on of these
Skippy, yeah.
Oh my God, Skippy, John Jewell.
Jewell.
Yeah, I mean, I did not look up to basketball players or baseball players or football players. I looked up to Frisbee players, and that was you guys, and I mean that's I mean, you guys were my heroes. I mean, I've said that 5 times. I get to be a fan when I talk to you, because usually I'm the old guy with the low PDGA number, but you know what I mean? But it's my turn. So
Wait a minute. You said you have a low PDGA number? Nah, can't be. What's your number? It's
31.
5 digits, isn't it? You're
No,
a 5-digit number, aren't you?
It's 3140.
Ah, what is the number up to now? About 120,000? Is that
I think
PGA numbers?
50.
150.
Yeah, it's
Wonderful.
it's insane
Wonderful.
today. So you stopped playing in the 80s. Well, did you completely stop playing, or did you just?
No. I what I ended up doing when I moved back up, I didn't like Southern California. Brand X went out of business, so I moved back to the Bay Area. And the tournaments I went to were there at Berkeley Aquatic Park at times, but mostly going to Santa Cruz to play at Tom Schott's Master Tournament and Skippy Jammer, all those events he put on there, and that campus was really wonderful. I mean, it's just the thing, you have this entire campus, to yourself to play, and that's the thing. The other thing with Berkeley, we use the athletic fields. We used the entire campus to play Frisbee golf, and it didn't cost us anything, so those kind of things are really good to have. So I played every so once in a while. Of course, you get older and your abilities diminish, and you get wrinkles and all this other stuff. So anyway, yeah. So it's like that. Yeah, I haven't played. Last time the time I played with Kirkland was last year, or maybe even a year and a half ago. Prior to that was maybe a year. Try to go back out, and I even tried to learn how to throw bevel edged backhand. Sidearm was hard to do as well for me, because I was so wired with the pendulum, with the whirl throw. But I had this one throw backhand that really opened up my eyes to bevel edge. I threw one backhand and it went 5 feet off the ground for 95 yards. And I'm thinking, holy shit, what is this? 5 feet, I swear, off the ground of 95 yards. Me throwing it.
Yeah.
So anyway, they're kind of hard to deal with, and I've been thinking about, I like to go throw a 500-yard, backhand in a tournament. Yeah, I'll be in the trees and everything. So I'd rather watch than be embarrassed. So.
No, I think that's amazing. So, I could just talk to you all day, Victor. I mean,
we carried a lot of stuff.
Yeah. And we can always come back and revisit, but I think we're probably right about the right amount of time. It's about drive time to work length. So just one more time. So the Berkeley Frisbee group, I got it right this time.
You did.
The book about the 6 people that started, well, so many people were involved, but
wait a minute. Those six people were all our peers, because they didn't have peers. Remember that? You got to remember, that's a big difference. They started the serious Frisbee play, where they would go out on the field. When I met Bob May, I was playing a softball game, and I played left field. I was a ruler of left field. Z was a ruler of center field. And Bob May's out there. Here's a grown man on a college campus with 24 Frisbees, and he's trying to throw them as far as he can. And nobody was catching them. And I'm thinking, what the hell? This is Berkeley. What's going on here with this guy? And I had to ask him nicely, I'm sorry, but we're going to play softball now. And he said, okay, he got his Frisbees. But then little did I know that 2 years later, and traveled with 10 of our BFG players to Houghton, Michigan for the IFT. I mean, that's really making a jump right there. So yeah, you're right. I wanted to give Bob May another plug in there. So
yeah,
and myself, of course.
Yeah, for sure. So your book is, and by the way, I'll put up links everywhere I post this podcast. There's going to be links. There's a link to buy the book. I'll also put a link to the GoFundMe page. If you throw sidearm today, Partly why we throw sidearm today is because you injured your back learning how to do the throw. How about that?
No,
But no,
none. The
no,
back is injured from basically old age. Those discs that deteriorate, and
yeah.
especially those 3 and 4 discs in your back, man, they start to go. You have to replace them. That's what I'm trying to do, is replace them. You can go say that, yeah, Victor was throwing backhand and he threw 1 yard, one bevel edge disc, 95 yards, and he quit. Said, that's it. I don't need to do anything else except
All right,
behind the back ace.
all right. Fine. That's on the list.
All
Victor,
right, my man.
Victor, I love you to death. You're a
I
treasure.
love you too.
And I'm gonna post everything I can to, like, let's sell some books, and
I know you will.
And if people have questions for you, just message you on Facebook. Is that the best place to contact you?
Sure, absolutely. And your book is in my book.
Is it really?
I got a picture of your book in my book. Also, Scott Zimmerman as well. I'm playing favorites here. So I took care of you guys.
Well, you know what? And well, in return, without even knowing that was happening, you are mentioned on page probably 6 of my autobiography.
All
Because
right.
the first thing I did in my book is I wanted to be very clear, because I talked about how early I was with the sport of disc golf, but I wanted to right off the bat say I was not first generation. There were people that came before me, and I listed, a half dozen of them. You were obviously included in that list.
And there were people who came before me.
We're going to go backwards. There was one question I wanted to ask, which I did not ask.
Wait, stop. The crow bird, I hate these crows, man. I tell you, if I had a BB gun, I'd kill all of them. No, kidding. No, I couldn't hear what you were saying because of that damn crow.
There was one super important question I didn't ask, and this is going to make it totally out of order, but I have to know. So PDGA member 1 was Ed Hedrick, founding the organization. Tell me the story of how you became number 2. I mean, people are going to want to know that. When did he approach you and said, I got this idea for this organization called the DGA at the time, right? But how did that happen?
Well, the DGA that came along in 75, I think, is when he was looking to start that, because he had the first the 9-hole disc golf event in 1969 at Brookside Park, standardized 9-hole, T-line, everything. Jay Shelton won that. That was like the first golf tournament, but on the East Coast, they don't recognize that as being Frisbee golf. So what Hedrick did, as I mentioned, he did the smart thing. He hired Stork, to take the reins and fly with this thing. And so Ed was free to go ahead and do his disc golf game, which is really wonderful, because he came up with the basket design, which is something we've been using for the last 45 years, is this beautiful basket and all. And I've seen other variations of it too. People are trying to experiment with. But Hedrick was the man. He was the guy. I mean, he got Irv Lander to do the Junior Frisbee Championships and all that. He went to the IFT and pumped, some support in there as well. But it's steady Ed Hedrick, really. And then after that is Stork.
But how did he?
And
When were you approached, though, to join the organization? I mean, you were the first person he asked to join.
Oh, no. Oh, okay. I knew he was doing it. He said he was, get your application in early and get a low number. So I got my mail in the morning. Boom. There was the form. Filled it out, put it in a check, and got on my bike and went straight to the post office in like 20 minutes.
That's great.
And it got mailed, and he got it, and boom. I'm 002. That's the only claim to fame I have now is 002, but I'm enjoying it.
Not the only.
All right, Scott.
All right.
I forgive you.
Thank you, man. Hey, again, love you. I can't wait to talk to you again. Let's see if we can raise some funds, and
Good luck to you. Thank you for all your goodness.
All right. Thanks.
Ciao.
Bye.